副教授，咱们还有大概3分钟。
OK，
我看大家都在陆陆续续的进来啊，这个还是副教授很有号召力，已经50多人了。Florida 现在是不是还是很暖和，
嗯，特别暖和。
是吧？我们这边儿已经下了今年的第一场大雪，然后
啊，
是鹅毛大雪，第一场雪就是
嗯，
鹅毛大雪，然后
哇，
就这2天还都特别冷。
冷，
对，整个可能整个这个寒潮影响的范围还是很大。
嗯，
所以大家都这2天都是裹着这个大衣，裹着围巾。咱们再稍微等一会儿哈，我看还有在等
好
候的。嗯，
，OK，no problem。
一直在陆陆续续的进。OK，10点整了。郭老师，咱们开始吧。这个副教授，咱们也开始。小郭，把那个是不是录一下屏？咱们副教授，咱们就正式开始，好吧？
OK，no problem。
大家早上好，欢迎大家来参加今天上午的由东北财经大学旅游酒店管理学院主办的新闻里高端讲坛启智著名学者论坛的第14期。我是东北财经大学旅游与酒店管理学院的常文，我是今天的主持人。那么我们今天非常有幸的邀请到了中佛罗里达大学的傅潇潇教授为我们做今天的讲座，讲座的题目是解构主题公园叙事中的沉浸式体验。简单的稍微介绍一下副教授哈。副教授是这个北大的本科，然后硕士是美国约翰霍普金斯大学，博士毕业于美国的普渡大学。这个现在工作的这个学校叫美国中佛罗里达大学罗森酒店管理学院，现在已经是美国第2大了吧？它和 UNLV 现在已经不相上下了，我感觉是吧？对吧？就是今年你是最大的，明年我是最大的。所以这个副教授的这个研究的范围在消费者行为、消费体验，然后旅游营销等等。他目前已经发表了高水平的学术论文70多篇，在 Google Citation 上、Google Scholar 上的 citation 已经超过了3000多次。也就是说，这个副教授实际上在我们这个旅游的领域里边已经是非常有名气的一个著名的教授了。那么我们今天有幸邀请到他为我们这个讲解一下，或者是这个分享一下他的一篇论文，是跟主题公园相关的。因为这个提到主题公园，可能国内的这个老师和同学们对相关的研究没有传统的旅游目的地，或者是这个其他的旅游消费者行为这些这个传统的话题这么熟悉。 所以今天我们想让傅教授给我们开启一扇新的窗户，看看他是怎么在主题公园的这个游客体验的这个情境下，做了他的这个相关研究。那么下面我就把话筒交给我们的傅教授，好吧？
Thank you so much, the Professor Chang. Let me share my screen.
OK 我插一句，不好意思啊，那个今天的我们的这个讲座内容、主题内容，副教授会用英文去做，然后之后我们的答疑环节会用中文去答疑啊。那个各位同
Yes.
学可以这个参考副教授的内容啊。
Okay. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Professor Chang. Good morning and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for participating in this seminar. Thank you, professors, PhD students, other researchers, and industry practitioners for showing up on this Friday morning by listening to my presentation. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Dr. Xiaoxiao Fu. I am associate professor at Rosen College, Hospitality Management, University of Central Florida in the United States. I'm also a PhD advisor. I was recently awarded as an Emerging Scholar of Distinction by International Academy of the Tourism. My research expertise pertain to consumer behavior, consumer experience, and also psychology. I am particularly skillful for technology, tourism marketing, destination brand marketing, destination planning, and also include cross-cultural tourism experience. So far, I have published more than 70 articles with high citation and high index. You can call me Dr. Fu or Dr. Xiao Xiao. Please let me get it started. Okay. On this slide, the topic is today's presentation, which is deconstructing immersion in theme park storytelling. It will take me for about 1 hour or so to share my thoughts and ideas. I see that you may want to share your comments in the chat box below, or you want to post the comments using Chinese or English in the conference room. I will do my best to address your comments and questions later after my presentation. Let's get started. Okay, first, I'd like to have you look at this slide, the first slide for today's presentation. It shows different colors from my topic. What does it mean? It shows that red color for theme park storytelling, yellow color for immersion, and blue color for deconstructing. I will explain each dimension in more details for better understanding. The red color, theme park storytelling, along with yellow color, immersion, are the focus for this study. Theme parks are indeed a popular form of entertainment and also become a tourism sector growing so fast. And therefore, studying immersions in theme parks is important for better understanding and developing tourist attractions, businesses, and destinations. However, in the previous studies, we did not know about how visitors become immersed in theme park storytelling, right? Therefore, as the first of this type of study, this research investigated visitors' immersion through storytelling experiences in theme parks. In particular, in Chinese theme park, domestic theme parks. Next blue, deconstructing means this study explores and investigated participants' underlying interpretation of immersions. The underlying the internal dimensions and subdimensions are considered to be important in the participant experiences. I have also included in the information for this article by this great team recently published in Journal of Travel Research, just for your easy reference. With this brief summary, including theme park storytelling, storytelling, and also include immersion and data analysis mentioned, I will introduce the agenda for today's presentation. First, I will share my understanding and ideas regarding the research background. Okay, for research background, on this slide, stories add meanings to our lives by sharing history, culture, imagination, entertainment, and also including emotional experiences. By practicing and performing these aspects such as culture, history, and emotional experiences, storytelling is an important human tradition. And this tradition uses narrative techniques as a way for people to communicate and interpret. This practice, called storytelling, uses communication strategies for telling culture and personal histories, and therefore exist through culture and time, from days to months to years and to century, etc. Telling stories can be told and can be found in many sectors, including in the leisure and tourism settings. Talking about a story, what characters are included in the story? What actions are included in the story? When this story happens, how and why this story happens can attract audience, impact them emotionally, and make them follow the experience. Multiple study genres are used too, including history, fantasy, romance, and horror. Such experiences, including telling stories, are included in the concept of immersion. Okay, on this slide, immersion is something that I need to mention because I like to draw attention to my second major key point, which is related to immersion. Immersion is a psychological state, and we use concept to understand a person is entirely surrounded with an experience. I like to share some example for immersions, including being saturated, being highly involved, being under the water, fully and deeply captured in the stories, mentally and emotionally focused on this aspect without paying attention to other aspects in the real world. Immersion leads to a powerful experience. As I mentioned earlier on these experience examples, this represents an important tourism activity. Okay, on this slide, with these concepts, including short introduction of storytelling immersion, I like to talk about study immersion at a highly relevant context storytelling, which is theme parks. As I said before, theme parks, including theme park industry and also include theme park operators, are growing so fast and attracting so many visitors, and we have found that storytelling and immersion are highly connected and closely associated for theme parks. Storytelling is a major strategy and also a highly used technique used by theme parks to describe immersion. I also want to add that, in particular, this study combines these two important concepts, including storytelling and immersion, by exploring how immersion into a narrative experience in theme parks takes place. Okay, this slide shows the rationale of selecting the Chinese domestic theme parks for this study. While both the United States and Europe are mature markets for theme parks, China is growing its theme parks so fast and going to be the largest market in the world very, very soon. This study is focused on Chinese operated parks in China, except for global brands, for example, 迪士尼 and 环球影城, as stories of those parks are different in cultural style and story structure in domestic theme parks in China, to make it very hard for the visitor to determine which elements matter. Such theme parks include 方特 融创、万达、长隆, and 欢乐谷 parks. I am sure that you are aware of these theme parks, domestic theme parks. In addition to the statistics provided by this paper, the fast development in the theme parks market, including the growing consumers, make the Chinese theme park industry an important topic of research. Okay, on this slide, I like to talk about research gaps. These research gaps provide 3 major points, including research on storytelling in theme parks is minimal, research on immersion in tourism is very limited, and also little is known regarding how immersion is achieved and how it is manifested in visitors' experiences. I will share more details for these 3 points. First, academic research on storytelling in theme parks is minimal, suggesting very limited studies and their outcomes. Immersion is closely associated with storytelling. Being immersed in a story shows the story is engaging, so that if visitors are able to understand and become fully absorbed in the story. Some scholars have failed to examine storytelling with their theme park visitor study. Other scholars did not define the process of storytelling within a theme park, and still just a few researchers failed to zoom into storytelling and how visitors experience it in theme parks. Next, research on immersion in tourism is still very limited, showing very little attempt. Despite immersion has been studied in works across many different disciplines, research on immersion in tourism settings is very limited. Even with so scarce evidence from the theme parks. Last but not least, still very little is known regarding how immersion is achieved and how it is manifested in visitor experiences. In particular, this idea remains unclear how visitors interact with stories in the context offering themes and experiences such as in the theme parks. Okay, on this slide, speaking of study purposes, addressing the above-mentioned gaps, this study aims to explore Chinese visitors' experiences with storytelling in theme parks, particularly from the theoretical standpoint of immersion. I have used the colors again to emphasize the study objectives. First, we have been trying to articulate the multiple stage process in the immersion to understand the experiences of visitors to become immersed, and also to understand the outcome for immersion for visitors' attitude and behavior at the theme parks. In terms of theoretical background, this study contributes to the understanding of theme park tourism across different disciplines, and also for practical implications, understanding how the staging of experiences takes place can not only facilitate the development of narrative attractions in theme parks, but also design and also deliver immersive and meaningful experiences with this park. Okay, next slides talk about theoretical backgrounds, which I will talk about later. First, I like to review the concept of storytelling in theme parks. It is worth mentioning that storytelling is an effective way to market destination through many strategies and to promote brands and images using narrative or story approaches. Theme parks have many stories within the park, including dark rides, stage shows, fields, rides, and also including roller coaster, etc. The storytelling strategies in theme parks are evident in oral when I speak to visitors, written when I write on a screen for visitors to understand, and also including visual/audience techniques. For example, I like to visitor to look at image located on this slide right there. The dancing is performing a beautiful dance movement, suggesting visual techniques involved in the story. In addition, this study focused on the storytelling, meaning how and why the story is told to visitors, which includes the structure of beginning, middle, and end, and plot, characters, and also themes. Okay, on this slide, let me show you a short summary of immersion in theme parks. Although immersion is closely associated with theme parks and their storytelling, only a few definitions of immersion can be found. For example, in Wolf's study conducted in 2012, he proposed 3 levels of immersion, including physical, sensual, and conceptual immersion. Physical immersion means physical saturation, where the user is physically surrounded by an intense experience. Sensual immersion means sensual saturation, indicating the user sees, hears, and smells is part of the experience. Conceptual immersion means cognitive engagement, means there is a lot of details and information for the user to enter the experience. Wolf of 2012 also entered in the emotional responses. However, he did not provide more information related to explicit emotion experiences, such as leading more empathy and identify the characters. Despite some other characters and examples for emergence, for example, in research focused on online gaming and virtual experiences, virtual environment, such as using video games and mobile games, we chose this Wolf's definition of immersion because of this context he proposed about the narrative aspects and narrative experiences, which are similar to the theme parks in our study. Many theme parks engage visitors in many physical aspects or physical immersion. For example, when you take the ride or roller coaster, you feel that you're immersed in the water. That means the most powerful experiences engage visitors in multiple types of immersion. An example for that would be a theme park features its own dimensions of storytelling, which engage visitors on many levels, leading the visitors to become happy and very satisfied with the experiences. However, I would like to say that visitors' immersive experiences with storytelling in theme parks is still an underexplored area, especially including the very limited research process and the manifestation of immersion. Okay, on this slide, I like to speak about storytelling in Chinese theme parks. Based on existing research and trade literature, we find that Chinese theme parks focus on theme, narrative, and culture. First, the theme is a major factor when selecting a park to visit. And this is very true in China and other countries because themes affect people's preference for theme parks. Popular themes in China include a list of examples. History, culture, comedy, adventure, and fantasy are all closely associated with stories. The narrative material of the stories used in Chinese theme parks are important traditionals. Folk tales and histories, for example, in 西游记, 孟姜女, 梁祝, and 牛郎织女. I'm sure that you're aware of these stories. Okay, on this slide, I'm showing the beautiful pictures for the stories being performed in theme parks. Well-known stories have been represented regularly, such as in Naja and Niwa, are performed at the Fangte and Rongchuang parks. The popular four stories in China, including Liang Zhu, Meng Jiangnu, Bai She Zhuan, and Niu Lang Zhi Nu, are also featured in Fangte parks. Many stories are designed within Chinese culture in theme parks. This emphasizes legendary stories as a core of the experiences. Parks like Songcheng are able to immerse visitors within historical and cultural moment, and visitors may find it very authentic and appealing. This slide shows Songcheng, Rongchuang, Qingming Shanghe and Fangte parks. Okay, I like to use next slide to show the narrative characteristic for Meng Jiangnu, showing light, body movement, facial expression, the background, music, etc. Similar picture with actions including environmental and the narrative factors were performed for Liang Zhu. This following slide shows the cultural aspects in Songcheng, with the minority groups dancing and singing and showing beautiful performances with all physical, audio, and visual factors considered to be very suitable for the story. Okay, for methodology. For this slide and also next slides, I will share my idea about the methodology I use for this study. Immersion through storytelling in theme parks is indeed an under-researched area. For an in-depth understanding of people's experiences, a qualitative study approach was considered to be very suitable for this study. Interview design was chosen to get a rich description which allows them to understand immersion better. An inductive deductive approach was used to analyze the data, which I'll review later. Both the data analysis, data collection and analysis focused on participants' storytelling experiences rather than relying on the researchers' assumptions. Okay, in terms of interview procedure, interviewers recruited people who have visited domestic brand theme parks in China. The interviews started with demographic and trip-related questions about theme parks in China in the past 2 years. Next, a list of semi-structured, open-ended interview questions were asked to explore the storytelling in theme parks. Specifically, the researchers asked the participants to remember the stories in the theme parks. To avoid leading the participants, the research team did not assume that immersion happened or use the term immersion. Instead, the experience of immersion showed up from the participants' own stories and their own experiences. The participants were probed to talk about what the immersion means, what it's like, what it has to do with emotion or feelings, and how the immersion influences his or her attitude and behavior towards the theme parks. Okay, this slide, I will talk about data collection. As I mentioned before, Chinese participants visited Chinese domestic theme parks were recruited for this study. This study conducted 30 interviews, including 11 interviews conducted in person, and the rest of participants communicated through WeChat. This paper used snowballing sampling strategies to collect data when initial participants referred other potential respondents. This sampling was terminated when no further saturation was found. The interviews lasted about 70 to 90 minutes and were audio recorded with the participants' approval. Participants were coded as P1 to P30 to protect their identity. Okay, for the data analysis, a hybrid approach is including deductive and also including deductive coding were used to analyze the interview transcripts. I'll use the example for illustrating the data analysis in next slide. Okay, I'd like you to look at the demonstration for sample data analysis. First, an inductive data-driven analysis was conducted to allow the codes to show from the data. The coding process follows the content analysis technique included. First, review each interview to get an idea of the initial data. In the following example. Second, identify emergent codes through an open coding. It shows the keywords listed in the sentences. And then third, take an inductive approach to analyze the codes with similar meanings into higher order subcategories such as auditory effects provoke powerful sensory sensations. As the final steps, the analysis took a turn to a deductive approach as the 4 highest level categories were refined based on concepts in the immersion literature. This example is sensory immersion as the outcome for this data analysis. This shift from inductive to deductive data analysis helped us reach a better and also higher level of understanding. The data analysis had a lot of comparison, which involves the refinement of categories and relationship among the authors. Okay, next slide, talk about results. I'd like you to look at this slide in terms of results. This table shows 30 participants in my interviews with so many diverse characteristics, including different ages, different genders, different jobs, different home, and also including different theme parks. The major theme parks mostly including方特、宋城、清明上河园 and 红创 parks. Next slide, I'd like to talk about access to immersion first before I show the figure summarizing the results. Some informants were attracted to theme parks and its stories because they are familiar or interested in the stories. The narrative familiarity is particularly salient with history, legend, and culture stories, such as P9 shared in this quote, who said that she was very interested in Liang Zhu, making her want to experience the story. However, the familiarity and personal interest may not impact participants' access to the story, which makes the participants to be surprised without any expectation as shown in P29's quote. Okay, on this slide, I will show you the 4 dimensions of the narrative immersion observed through the data analysis. It should be noted that immersion through storytelling in theme parks has many processes. In the images, you will notice time to refer to the spatial temporal immersion, see eyes to refer to the sensory immersion, and also notice the smiling face for the emotional immersion. In addition to the 4 stage of immersion, we have also reported cases without immersion. Due to the limited space, I only provided the most outstanding quotes. In following slides, I will be presenting the major findings, including a framework for understanding mechanism of immersion through the theme parks. Okay, This slide shows the first immersion stage with spatial temporal immersion. I have provided 3 subcategories for the stage, which consider the first and most immediate level of immersion. This stage emphasizes the immersion with time and space. It is similar to the concept of surrounding in the online gaming context. I will talk about one example for each slide for the 4 immersion stages. The first example I will talk about will be setting are appropriate for narrative transitions. By reading the following quotes, I found that participants felt the setting of 牛郎织女 fit well with storyline, especially the chaining of the events. In particular, the visitor shows that he or she was placed on a platform which changed with the plot developed, including the different scenes of the experience. Therefore, our team are able to find the settings in Funker Park being suitable for narrative transitions we placed in the first spatial temporal stage. Okay, on next slide, I'll be talking about sensory immersion. This sensory immersion goes beyond the spatial and temporal aspects because participants engage with the story using multiple sensory aspects. This immersion is used to visual through our eyes and auditory through our hearing experiences. The sensory aspects not only stimulated the visitor's senses, but also is able to capture the visitor's interest. Earlier on, I have also provided an example for this sensory immersion, but I also like to talk about another quote related to technology for this immersion. This refers to the third subcategory on this slide. As the particular shows in his quote, he was very amazed by the highly technology elements, including 5D effects, sound effects, lighting effects in the storytelling experiences at Songcheng Park. This definitely upgrades the multiple sensory experiences. Okay, on next slide, I will talk about the stage of a conceptual imaginative immersion. Participants discussed how the storytelling provided with more understanding of the story with conceptual imaginative immersion. This type of immersion features the audience focus the attention and clear memory of the stories. Participants tended to become mentally occupied, detached from reality, unable to recognize time, and also become very aware of the physical environment, as the show was all that mattered for them. This example can be used for illustrating conceptual imaginative immersion, with the third point indicating that interaction with story produces meaningful moments. Participants were able to contribute to the stories by giving a task. I remember the task is called Protecting the Colorful Stones. In China, it is 保护五彩石, to help visitors to help 女娲 to make up the sky in Funke parks. This makes participants feel like part of the story. Such opportunity not only produce an authentic feelings, but also help the participants believe that they contribute as well. This adds to their better understanding of the stories and also to their immersion. Okay, next slide talk about emotional immersion at the last stage. Participants reached an immersive status with greater intensity, which is emotional immersion. They become less aware of the surroundings and more connected with the characters in the story and felt emotionally thrilled when the story ended. The high emotional arousal seemed to lead the participants to enter the story more profoundly. Let me show you the last point for this last immersion stage, namely emotional immersion, which points to audience experiences, bringing emotional changes which are aligned with storyline. This quote provided by participants showed that their emotion is synced with story. This definitely shows that happiness and sadness relate to the story characters and story folded. Okay, I'd like to show you the positive visitor outcome. Positive outcomes as example of the immersion. This quote indicates the immersion experiences through storytelling may stimulate positive visitor outcome, which shows meaning making, satisfaction, and repeat visitation felt by the participants. Immersion should be understood as being more lasting experience in participants' minds and should also play an important role in crafting and also delivering theme park storytelling experiences which visitors want to enjoy. All right, this slide we will talk about non-immersion. This slide indicates the non-immersion status of the participants calling for attention. It needs to be mentioned and also be noted that not every participant was immersed in the theme park storytelling experiences. And also, the theme parks failed to engage some participants. I have listed some examples, many examples for the non-immersions, but I like to just talk about 2 examples. I will share the first example regarding lack of authenticity as a reason for the participants to get a non-immersive experience. For example, a particular complaint about the park as a man-made place without much real cultural background or producing well-designed details. The staged experiences were therefore too commercial for visitors to get immersed. Another example for non-immersion is that I would like to share is this connection between stories. Participants noted that some attractions, including several short stories, but the presentations were very fragmented due to the weak connection between these stories. In this case, participants reported being very confused about the meaning that the attraction aimed to convey. Okay, with slide, I will talk about conceptual framework as shown in this figure. This framework shows it sheds light on immersive experiences with storytelling, which shows process for the visitor to become immersed. As you can see in this picture, each immersion stage is associated with a higher level of involvement. Yet, I need to make note that immersion experiences is not necessarily in this sequence, in this order, as a visitor does not necessarily progress through the stages. As figure 1 shows, at the pre-trip stage, familiarity with the narrative material as well as personal interest can make visitors have very easy access to the storytelling experiences. Visitors may choose a theme park or experience a story because they're very familiar with or very interested in the cultural and historic background of the story. The immersion through storytelling involves 4 stages along the continuum. They're called spatial temporal immersion, sensory immersion, conceptual imaginative immersion, and also including emotional immersion. In addition to the 4 dimensions of immersion, I have also given some example in theme parks, which are not effective to engage visitors. Okay, in terms of the conclusion, I like to talk about the conclusion, including theoretical and practical implication for this study. I would like to summarize this study first. Storytelling is an important concept to understanding successful, also including some unsuccessful examples related to theme parks designs. As theme parks as a popular entertainment place, it is necessary to understand how visitors perceive storytelling and how to use storytelling to achieve the visit experience that individuals want to enjoy. Considering the lack of existing studies in the area, this study investigated visitors' immersion through storytelling experiences in theme parks. The analysis of 30 interviews revealed a 4-stage immersion process with 11 sub-dimensions discovered. This conceptual framework showed how participants experienced immersion and which factors were considered as important to the experiences. This finding, in my humble opinion, extended previous studies on immersion by refining them into the 4 categories, including spatial temporal immersion, sensory immersion, conceptual imaginative immersion, and also including emotional immersion. On this slide, first, this study presented a better understanding of the theme parks immersion experiences by extending the very limited studies on immersion through storytelling at theme parks. I and my team members are able to discover a complex storytelling processes. This involves different stages of immersion and also different aspects for each subcategory. This contribution was made to extend Wolf's and other researchers. It is worth noting that the dimensions include both narrative and environmental factors. For example, the environmental aspects of the storytelling, including lighting, sound effects, music, color, texture, and also including other elements, will definitely help improve the narrative and the physical factor of the visitor to get rich sensory experiences. Furthermore, in addition to that, I would like to point out that the framework shows that immersion is a co-creation experience. During that experience, the visitor have to invest their time and their energy for getting a better and good experience. The example I used was repairing sky with assistance with many visitors. Therefore, this study provided a more focused and more interesting perspectives at immersion through theme park storytelling by showing the role of co-creation in tourist experiences. Okay, this slide continue to talk about theoretical implications. This study sheds light on a direct link between staging stories and immersion. On this slide, I like to talk about contribution in theories in particular. This research provides insights on the link between staging stories and immersion. Narrative presentation help visitors understand stories. A good story was found to have the following features, including having a clear structure, evident questions that make the visitors want to know. These aspects draws pictures people's focus and involvement in the story, and also impacts visitors in an emotional way. In addition to have a good story itself, The storytelling should feature a physical space that surrounds the visitor. It uses multiple sensory designs with sights, sounds, smells, and other elements. It places the visitor in a role and also allows them to believe in the stories. And finally, it promotes the emotional responses from the visitors. These findings contribute to the knowledge on narrative construction and staging in many types of arts, entertainment, and tourism facilities. Okay, on this slide, I want to talk about practical implications. This study suggests very practical industry-oriented strategies and skills based on our findings for the design factors on theme parks and their settings. Just give some examples. The setting plays an important role to promote immersion. The design of settings, such as those of dark rides and stage shows, should be made to be very authentic and holding people's interest and make people more attracted by the attractions. Design with multiple sensory factors, in addition to that, uses visual, music, and technologies for delivering effective spatial storytelling in theme parks. Greek acting, as shown in the cultural stories, for example, is very important for us to understand its role in human component of performance. This definitely encourages engagement, interaction between actors and also between actors and visitors. In summary, theme parks are urged to understand the immersive power of storytelling, and they need to facilitate increased immersion and help visitors to live the story. Okay, on the last slide of my presentation, I'd like to talk about the limitation and future research directions. First, we should understand that the findings of the study are not generalizable, but instead to establish patterns of unsuccessful immersion. Of course, the identified dimensions and also including subdimensions are not exhaustive and should be subject to further investigation. In particular, development and validation of quantitative measures would be a logical next step following this study. Furthermore, it would be useful to compare and contrast if the immersion of Chinese visitors are at Western operated theme parks is similar. For example, in Shanghai Disneyland, also including Universal Beijing, as those parks contain Western stories and characters related to culture. The dimensions could be considered to serve as scales for qualitative scales to measure the quality of immersion to theme parks or other settings. Despite these limitations, however, I would like to say that there are so many opportunities for us to conduct more studies for this topic, and we consider this study as an important step to comprehend the complex landscape of storytelling in the theme parks. Okay, please add me to your WeChat for sharing further comments and questions with me. Thank you for participating in my presentation. I'd like to turn over to the audience comments and questions using Chinese or English for me. If you have any question, I'll be more than happy to answer those.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Fu，谢谢傅教授。刚才的这个精彩的 presentation，它其实给我们讲述了一个很完整的，发在了这个旅游顶刊上的一篇质性的文章。这个其实是我们相对来说比较少见的，可能这个大家的这个研究的这个领域不太一样，然后 这个做旅游的和做这个consumer behavior 的也有很多的学者，其实是在做定量的研究比较多。然后，但是这个副教授独辟蹊径啊，做了一个这种这个非常非常严谨的一个定性的研究。那么我知道咱们其实有很多的老师和同学，尤其是国内的这些老师和同学，其实很关注定性研究的，尤其是怎么能够把定性的研究发在顶刊这样一个级别的期刊上。那么我们看一下有没有同学或者老师想和副教授交流一下的，可以可以举手，然后我们这个主持人会把你的静音打开。
Please.
或者说可以在聊天的那个对话框里直接把你想要问的问题把它打开，把它这个打字打出来，我们也可以和副教授一起交流一下。有没有？
副教授您好，我有一个小的问题，
嗯，
你能听到我说话吗？
可以。
可以。
刘洋老
嗯
师是我们学院的今年刚刚引进的这个应该叫海外，现在不叫海外优博了，是优秀博士。他是
嗯
刘洋是，哎呀，我突然间
格里菲斯，
格
我是
里菲斯
澳大利亚
大学的，
格里菲
对，
斯大学。
澳大利亚格里菲斯大学的博士啊。
嗯首先非常感谢副教授给我们做的这个讲座，对我来说非常非常的有启发。我也是一直做质性的研究，然后我其实想到的一个比较小的问题就是，通常我们比如说这种，嗯，我们说这个游客他们 whether they are immersed or not 这种界定对我来说比较难，就是因为它是一种主观的体验嘛。有的时候我们觉得，他是否真的沉浸在了其中，这个对我来说就是有的时候很难界定这个点。所以通常我们就是直接去问我们的受访者，那你是否是沉浸在其中？如果他回答是，那我们可能就认为他是 immersed；如果他回答不是，我们就认为他就没有 immersed。就是这种，您觉得会不会受到一点点质疑呢？
I like your question very much because I think the quality of the data would depends on the quality of data analysis and also depends on data collection because
Mm-hmm.
you ask the participants to be immersed, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would say I would not let the response to answer the question directly.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I said in my data analysis that I will not allow the interviewers to question the interviewees to answer in immersion first. I like
Mm-hmm.
to talk about their deeper experience first. That's
Mm-hmm.
why this happens after the data collection, data analysis first.
And then how do we judge whether they are immersed or not?
That's a very critical question because it depends on the subjective assessment of the reviewers, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because immersion would be think about using in-depth experiences of
Mm-hmm.
the respondents instead of using a very direct question, are you immersed or not?
Yeah.
You don't want to get a question like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we'll say you will say talk about they enter a very deep experience with characteristics related to immersion. That's how you find immersion happens. I would say my experience with data collection, data analysis.
Okay, thank you very much. I got it clear.
No problem. Yeah.
OK，我刚才看张琳。OK，张琳OK，张琳是我们现在在读的 PhD student。
傅老师您
介绍
好，
一下。
傅老师您好，非常感谢您给我们做这个讲座，然后收获挺多的。我对您这个话题其实还挺感兴趣的。然后我有一个非常小的问题想问您一下，就是 现在不是这个疫情的这种情况嘛，然后我们都在学校的话，可能在这个样本的获取方面有一点点困难，就是我们可能以学生样本为主，或者是附加一些线上的这种样本，和这种数据采集。我想请问您，就是如果在投稿的时候，像这种样本会不会被专家认定为就是这种不是特别有效的样本？或者您在这个样本选取方面或者数据采集方面有什么比较好的建议吗？谢谢。
That's a great question. I love the question. Because data collection definitely would be very suitable for today's COVID-19 situation. But I would say I prefer in-person interviews rather than using entirely like online interviews. Because when you meet a person to be a participant in person, I would say definitely help with interviewers to understand how and why these participants explain their experiences. I would say an in-person interview would be better. However, do understand that because of the COVID-19 situation, we need to utilize online data collection. I understand that. But I would say reviewers would not put a lot of restriction on this data collection, no matter how also related to settings. It doesn't matter. It relate to quality instead of quantity and also the settings.
非常感谢，谢谢您。
No problem.
Okay, any other questions? 其实咱们做定性研究的同学很多，其实我还想问一下傅教授一个问题哈，因为我们现在我是观察了一下国内的这个 publication 的 trending 和国外的 publication 的 trending，其实国内现在很注重 case study，就是做案例研究，但是我看好像这个国外的期刊上并没有很多案例研究的这个文章的发表。这个您有没有一些之前有没有过案例研究的一些经验可以跟大家分享一下，或者说能够帮助案例研究更好的发表的经验？
Well, honestly, I don't have experience with case studies, but I would say if possible, we could use multiple case studies include paper. Yeah, that's my experience.
It will increase the possibility to be published.
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
journal?
including multiple case studies instead of using one case study.
I see. Okay.
嗯，
吧，咱们还有没有其他同学有想要交流的问题的？那么我就再问一个比较这个我感兴趣的问题哈。我看了一下傅教授这个之前其实就有了解，傅教授在很多这个 tourism hospitality 的顶刊，尤其是 tourism 的顶刊，比如说我们说的这个这边有一个问题，我是不好意思啊，我刚看到，宋城的模式在北方复制会成功吗？
it's a soft message. Well, that's a hard question for me to address, but I would say it's very possible to replicate Songcheng's matters, Songcheng's experiences in northern China. I would say very possible, but I don't have a proof from the industry. I would say that's my assumption.
OK， 有没有回答您的问题？韩老师还是同学啊？OK， 还有没有其他同学要问问题？我是想请傅老师分享一下，在这个旅游的3大顶刊，比如说 GTR、ATR 和 TM 上的这个发表的经验，有没有什么可以和我们的硕博的同学分享一下？包括我们年轻老师，因为这几本杂志在国内现在都是属于重量级的，很有分量、很有含金量的杂志。我们的年轻老师其实也很想在这些杂志上有一些这个发表，看看傅老师这边能不能给我们提供一些什么帮助或者是经验。
based on my limited experience with 3 journals, I would say the 3 journals are very different because annals of tourism research would be very conceptually oriented journal, ask different sociology and also anthropology matters. I think that's a focus for annals research, tourism research. For tourism management, I would say their topic would focus on managerial aspects. And also for Journal of Travel Research, because there's change for their editors, I would say I don't have a lot of experience with new editors. But I think one editor would be responsible for quantitative stuff, and the other talk about qualitative papers. I would say this journals are very different. I would say my experience based on that.
Okay, thank you. 还有没有其他问题？然后这个副教授也很贴心的把他的联系方式直接贴到了屏幕刚才那个最后一页的这个slide 上面。如果有同学未来想要对这个 theme park 或者是这种知性研究和副教授进行深入探讨的话，欢迎大家这个私底下联系副教授啊。大家可能觉得这个今天的人比较多，不太好意思问很艰深的这个问题，那么就请私下联系副教授。那么我们今天这一期的新闻旅高端讲堂就到此结束，感谢副教授。有机会的话，如果您回国的话，欢迎来到东财跟我们做一个线下的面对面的这样的一个交流。谢谢您。
Yeah, let me end my presentation discussion by saying that I appreciate your support. I cannot thank you enough for your attention, interest, and encouragement.
Thank you，谢谢大家。我们今天的这个讲座就到。